A student has sent me this question. They're not sure what the answer is, so let's work through it. It's actually a slightly tricky question. You have to put a little bit of thought and effort into it, so I'll explain it step by step. The question says, consider a market where demand is given by the quantity equaling 12 minus P, the price, and where the quantity supplied is given by quantity equals 2 multiplied by the price. If the government offers a $3 per unit subsidy to consumers, then which of those is the correct answer? Alright, so let's work through this. Let's start with demand. So we're given this equation representing the demand function, or we can visually represent it as a demand curve, or we can represent it in tabular form as a demand schedule. But before we do that, I'm going to rearrange this equation to have it so that we've got the price, or the demand price, equals 12 minus the quantity, because I want the quantity to be on the horizontal axis when I draw it in a graph. So we're just going to get to this equation. It's just a simple case of algebraic manipulation. So we're just going to we want the price to be on the right hand side. So we'll add P on this side, and what we do to one side we do to the other, add P to the other side, and then we minus quantity from the right hand side. What you do to one side you do to the other, minus quantity from the other side. And so we've effectively moved the price to the right hand side and the quantity to the left hand side. So far so good. So if we then put that into an Excel spreadsheet, we can have quantity going from 0 up, and then we want to have in the next column the price, which is going to be 12 minus the quantity. So once you have that as an equation, you can then, or Excel can easily work out for you what the demand price will be. That is to say, for example, at the quantity of 3 units, the consumers would be willing and able to pay $9. At the quantity of 6 units, the consumers would be willing and able to pay $6, and so on. So then we can graph it, and we'll have a graph that looks like this: a downward sloping demand curve reflecting the law of demand. So far so good. Then we need supply. Now we're given this equation as our supply function, and we again want to rearrange that so we've got a supply price on the right hand side. So what we can do is we can simply divide through by 2 on the left hand side and divide through by 2 on the right hand side, so that 2's cancel out on the left hand side, and we're left with quantity divided by 2 equals P, or just the other way around, the supply price equals the quantity divided by 2, and we whack that into our next column and we get these supply prices, meaning that, for example, at the quantity of 3, the suppliers would be willing and able to accept a minimum of $1.50. At the quantity of 8, the suppliers would be willing and able to accept a minimum of $4, and so on. So if we then graph that, we've got this upward sloping supply curve, reflecting the law of supply. Now note here, when we've got our demand and supply curves like this, we're dealing with the simple demand supply model, which presupposes that we're thinking about a competitive market. We're not thinking about an imperfectly competitive market. Okay, so far so good. And from there we can say, alright, the equilibrium price is going to be $4 and the equilibrium quantity will be 8. And we can further say what the economic welfare area will be. Remember, it's going to be the consumer surplus plus the producer surplus. So that's this area here, this triangle, between the demand and supply curves up to the point of intersection between them, that is up to the equilibrium quantity. Alright, now the question says that there is a subsidy of $3 per unit provided to the consumers. So we would have to modify our demand equation here in this way. Let's say that it's going to be $12 plus $3 per unit minus the quantity. So if we then put that equation into our spreadsheet, we would get these prices here. And when we represent it graphically, we can see that it's going to be creating effectively a new demand curve. Okay, so consumers are willing to pay, at any given level of output, they're willing to pay $3 more because they have been given $3 more by the government per unit. Okay. Alright, now what's the implication of that for the market price and quantity? Well, we'd have a new equilibrium price of $5 and a new equilibrium quantity of $10. So we can say that the quantity sold in the marketplace has increased from 8 to 10. That is, it's increased by 2. But what's happened to the economic welfare area? Well, this is where it's a little bit tricky, because we're still taking the private market demand curve and the private market supply curve as our indicators of marginal benefit and marginal cost. But what's happened is we've gone beyond the point where the private marginal benefit equals the private marginal cost. We've gone beyond that to a new level of output. And we can see there that what's effectively occurred is that the marginal cost for each unit of output beyond 8 is greater than the private marginal benefit curve. Okay? And therefore, we've gone beyond the point where we're adding to economic welfare to where we would be deducting from economic welfare. We've gone into negative economic welfare territory, indicated by this little triangle here. Okay, so we've got total economic welfare all the way up to 8, and from that we need to deduct this economic welfare, negative economic welfare. And if we wanted to, we can be a little bit snazzy. We can take that triangle, because we're dealing with straight lines here, so it's all nice and neat. We can take that triangle and we can effectively turn it upside down and then flip it over like this. Whoops, like this. So we can see there that triangle we've just turned upside down and flipped over and put into the triangle of economic welfare. So what's happened is that the economic welfare area is now this area, because we want to deduct from it this. We would want to call this our, as you should be able to guess, the deadweight loss of economic welfare due to the introduction of the subsidy. Now if we look at the options that were available to us to choose from, if we go back to the original question, which is the correct one? The quantity of traded goods increases by 2 units. Well, that's true. There is an increase in total surplus. That is untrue, because we know that the total surplus is actually smaller because a deadweight loss has been created, which kind of cuts off the nose of the economic welfare in the free market equilibrium scenario. So it's not the first option. The second option, the quantity traded increases by 3 units. No, so we don't need to read the rest. The total quantity traded remains unchanged. No, it increases. The last option is none of the given answers. Well, none of the answers given above this one. That is the correct answer. The correct answer is really the quantity traded increases by 2 and there is a decrease in total surplus. And that is the answer to that.